Hey guys, it's Kaylee. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. If you are new, nice to meet you. My name is Kaylee and I'm an online reseller. I sell clothing that I find at thrift stores and I flip them on sites like eBay and Poshmark for profit. One of the main purposes of my channel is to teach newer resellers things I wish I would have learned sooner when I was a newer reseller, so that you can launch into your business and move along much faster than I did when I started. So with that, we are going to be talking about scams today. Scams is not something I did a lot of research in or had much experience with when I was a newer reseller, and it actually took a few years to learn the ins and outs of scams and scammers and their tactics and how to handle them. I'm not sure if you guys watch Hustle at Home Mom, but she is one of my favorite resellers to watch, and she recently did a video on scams and scammers. So after you're done with this video, make sure to check that video out because she makes some really good points. So the one thing I want to start out by saying is that not everyone is trying to scam you. And I think newer resellers need to hear this because I'm on quite a few Facebook groups for resellers, and I think one of the number one scammer questions that I see is a newer reseller who thinks that someone trying to buy from them who has zero or little feedback is automatically trying to scam them. You guys, we are all new on eBay at some point, and we're all new on Poshmark at some point. So just because somebody doesn't have any feedback or they've never purchased something does not mean that they are a scammer. And in fact, you may be losing a customer and a sale by automatically assuming. Always want to believe the best in people. And so I'm going to use an old phrase that my previous company that I worked for before reselling told me, and that is to trust but verify. I just felt like I had to start this video by saying that. That's like my number one tip of this whole video, is that don't automatically assume that somebody's trying to scam you. There are vicious people in this world. There are jerks. And there are people that are just truly upset about the condition an item arrived in, and whether you want to believe them or not, there is always a chance that they are a buyer and they're not a scammer and they really just truly did have a bad experience. We might not understand how we got to that point, but we always need to keep that in mind because you don't want to upset your customers. So the number one way I think that is easiest to identify whether somebody is trying to scam you or not is to look at the tactic that they're trying to use. The number one tactic that I see most scammers using is they use anger and they use pressure to try and get you to make a decision quickly. Most of the time, they are asking for a refund or a partial refund, or in some cases, they haven't even purchased the item and they're trying to harass you to lower the price of the item. And they'll usually do this by sending you a very, very long message and discredit who you are as a seller and basically tell you that your items are worth nothing, and try to get you to really quickly provide a refund or drop the price immediately, or else you're fearing negative feedback or losing a sale. So if someone ever sends you a really angry message automatically, and it's a pretty long message and they're adding pressure to you to make a decision really quick, if you feel like that's going on, chances are that person is a scammer. I would say 95% of the time, that is the tactic that I see scammers using. So anger and time pressure, trying to get you to make a decision really quickly. So I'm going to talk about 5 different scams that have happened to me recently. And all 5 of these have happened to me, and you just got to know how to deal with them. So I'm going to tell you the 5 common ones that I know of. And again, these have personally happened to me, and I'm going to tell you how to deal with them. So number 1, this goes for both eBay and Poshmark and basically any selling platform, is if somebody tries to ask you to contact them outside of the platform for the sale, automatically a scammer. It is against the rules on every selling platform that I've ever been on to take a transaction off of that platform. And so what these scammers will do is they will send you a message and tell you how interested they are in the item. and they'll want to ask you more questions or want to know what the price is, or they say that they are ready to buy and to email them at gmail.com or yahoo.com, and they'll put what looks like a personal email address on there. I've even seen scammers that put a phone number on there. If anyone is ever trying to tell you to go off of the platform that you are selling on, automatically a scam. Handle these situations is I don't even respond to them. I just report and move on. So this next one more so happens to me on eBay, and that is because on eBay, a buyer can purchase the item, basically agree to buy the item, but then they don't actually have to pay for it right then and there. And so the item kind of just sits in limbo. And the most common scam I see in this phase is a buyer will purchase something from me, meaning they haven't actually paid for it yet, but they have committed to buying it, and that listing then gets taken down and acts as if it's sold and no one else can buy it. So the scammer purchases the item without actually paying for it yet, and then they send me a message and complain to me about how high the pricing is or how high the shipping is, and they'll send me a couple of paragraphs telling me how ridiculous the pricing is. And they'll say things like, I am only willing to pay X amount of dollars for the item or for shipping, but they've already committed to buying it. So I actually had this happen this week, and they did this with the shipping. And I always, in all of these situations, I always remain professional in case they aren't a scammer and they actually are a customer and they're just being a jerk. I always remain professional, and I never send back a really long response to anybody. I feel like if I'm starting to type out a really long response, chances are I'm acting on emotions and not professionalism. And so I'll take a little break and then come back to the message. So I recommend always being short and concise when dealing with both scammers and difficult customers. So in this case where the buyer has committed to buying something but not actually paid for it and then complains to me about the price, I just said, I apologize that the cost is so high. I wish shipping wasn't so high, but unfortunately I do not negotiate prices for shipping. They are set by the carrier. It looks like you've already committed to buying this item. Would you like me to cancel the order? Now this one actually happened this week, and when this happened, they continued arguing back and forth with me. And I just kept sending back the same message, would you like me to cancel the order? If I can, I like to have in a message the buyer asking to cancel the order, because then I can just simply go in, cancel the order, and select the reason buyer asked to cancel the order. Now I have had this happen where I haven't gotten a response back, and so that's why I have the unpaid item assistant in place. And this is automatic and free, and you can do this on your eBay store. And again, this is kind of only an eBay problem. On Poshmark, I've never had that happen because they have to pay for it right then and there. But on eBay, you can set up the unpaid item assistant. Just a quick Google search, figure out how to do that and where to go on eBay. But it's just basically I think maybe 2 clicks. And if you don't do this, you have to manually go in each time and open up a case for a buyer. Or you can do what I do and automatically have it set up where if someone does not pay for an item after so many days, it automatically creates a case for you. And then once that case is closed and they don't pay, then it will automatically relist the item for you with no fees involved. That is the best way because it is painless and it's no brain power to do that. It just automatically happens. And I think I have mine set, I think to the minimum. I think it's after 3 days. Maybe it's 2 days. After a couple days, I have it set to the minimum. If they still haven't paid, that's when that case goes. And then after so many days, after the case is open and they have a chance to buy it, again, eBay automatically opens and closes that case for me and relists my item. So that is the best non-headache way to do that. And I recommend if you are selling on eBay to make sure to have your unpaid item assistant set up. So this next one kind of goes along those same lines where a buyer has purchased an item, they've paid for it, you've actually shipped the item to them, and then they're saying it arrived damaged. Now sometimes items do arrive damaged, and that's why I said in the beginning to not automatically assume that somebody is trying to scam you, but it's pretty obvious when someone is saying something arrived damaged and it's not. For instance, when I first started reselling and I didn't know anything about scammers, I sold, I think it was an Affliction t-shirt to this guy, and he flipped out on me when he received the package and said that there were like 6 different rips in the shirt where I didn't put that on my listing, and he wanted an immediate refund. And he actually sent a picture of a same color t-shirt with holes in it, but it obviously wasn't that shirt. Now back then I was basically scared to lose a buyer, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I don't know how that would have even have happened, and I just refunded him his money because I was too worried about losing my eBay account to even deal with it. If this were to happen to me today, I would probably just tell him I'm sorry that that is not how the item arrived, and to please start a return so that I can get the item back, and once the item is received back, I can offer him a full refund. Now you might be thinking, okay, so what if he does go ahead and send the item back and he puts holes in it just to cover his butt, and now I'm out the money and I have to refund him? The thing about scammers is once you give them a reason to put more work in, they usually leave you alone. And in those cases, I've never had somebody come back to me and create a return. They just move on. And if they did leave me negative feedback, I can contact eBay and tell them the situation and tell them that I offered a return. And I would probably also tell them that I have no idea how 3 holes would end up in a shirt when I didn't ship it out that way. And eBay would hopefully more than likely side with me because the buyer refused a return, and they would hopefully remove that negative feedback for me. I've actually had pretty good luck with eBay customer service, and most of the time they recognize that I am a seller on there with positive feedback. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video, but you can always contact eBay and ask them what your options are. If you think somebody's trying to scam you, call them and ask them. Now, right now we are in the middle of a pandemic, so I think you have to give them your phone number and then an agent will call you, or they also have a chat bar, which I'm finding most helpful when I need to reach an agent. In that case, if somebody is not trying to scam you and the item truly did arrive damaged, you can decide what to do in that situation, but I always offer a return. And by the way, if you didn't know, even if you don't offer returns on eBay, if in your listings you say no returns accepted, the buyer can still request a return. So you can still tell them to request a return, and then you'll get a notification that you can either accept or decline regarding this return, and then they can return it to you. So in the case of a scammer, if you're offering a return and you're saying, please request one, chances are they're never even going to move on to the next step, but just something to keep in mind. If you don't offer returns, you can still have them request one. This next one is a good one, and I wanted to bring it up because it's actually been happening to me a lot lately, and most of the times it's not a scam, but sometimes it can be. And I wanted to bring this up so that you know how to deal with this kind of a situation for both your customers and a scammer. So I've had a lot of situations recently where, and this actually has happened before COVID. It's happened since the beginning of this year. I don't know why or what's going on with USPS because that's the carrier that I use. I rarely use anything else. But the kind of situation I'm talking about is an item is shipped to the buyer and it shows as delivered, but the buyer contacts you and says that they never received it. So the first thing I always do when a buyer says this is I check the tracking. Now, if the tracking says it's stuck somewhere, I usually go ahead and refund the buyer if it's been like a crazy amount of days. If it's been like 2 weeks and it definitely should have gotten to them and it's still stuck in like North Carolina or something, I just tell them I'm sorry, I don't get notified when something is stuck in transit, but it does look like the item is stuck in transit. I'm going to go ahead and give them a refund and hopefully the item ends up getting to them. And that's happened to me quite a bit recently also, but I would rather make my customer happy, and if they end up getting the item eventually, great. I can always set up a missing item request through USPS to where hopefully they'll find the package, although I've not had much luck with that. That one's not a scam, but I did want to make sure to tell you to actually check the tracking because sometimes it is stuck. Now, on the flip side, if the item says it has been delivered, you've done everything on your end that you can do. But this does not always mean that somebody is trying to scam you. I have had cases where the items show delivered, my buyer's messaging me and telling me that they're upset because they can't find it, even though it said it's delivered, but it's not showed up. I just very politely and professionally tell them to please check the areas that the item shows delivered. Please check surrounding areas on your porch. Sometimes USPS likes to put things like under chairs or inside of grills to protect from the weather. And sometimes they also leave it at a neighbor's house, or if they live in an apartment complex, to check the office. Once I say that, I tell them to give it a couple days, and if it still doesn't show up, to let me know. Most of the time, the very next day, they come back and tell me that a neighbor had it, or it was just delayed and they scanned it as delivered, but they ended up delivering it the next day. Most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, they end up finding the item. So they're not always trying to scam you in this case, and that's why I wanted to bring up this situation. Now, on the flip side, if you've done everything that I just said, and they're still saying the item was not delivered and they're arguing with you, again, using anger and pressure to get you to send a refund, kindly tell them to open up a case on eBay saying the item never arrived. At this point in time, eBay will check the tracking and show that it's delivered, and they'll make a decision then. But again, guys, once you give this option to a scammer to contact eBay for a refund, or to contact them to open up a case, or you contact them to start a return, they stop there. They don't want to deal with somebody like you who is going to go through the proper steps with eBay, because again, they're looking out for people who don't know scams and don't know the appropriate actions that they can take. And again, you can always contact eBay or Poshmark if you want to know what your options are. So the fifth one I wanted to mention, and the last example of a scam that I have personally dealt with and that I see often, is my least favorite. And it's my least favorite is because it really preys on nice people. And that is when people try to give you a sob story to try and get an item for close to free or a really, really significant reduced price. So I've had this happen quite a few times to me personally, and I think the most recent one, I had some lady who claimed to be buying for somebody who lived in a nursing home. I guess she worked in the nursing home is what she claimed, and she said that she helped people with their budgets to purchase apparel that they needed for their wardrobe at the nursing home. So anyways, I had this LL Bean Gore-Tex rain jacket. It was meant to prevent rain and wet weather, and it was kind of expensive. I think I had it priced at like $45 or $55, somewhere around there, which was what the eBay market was selling it for. And I mean, there were a bunch of solds on this jacket and they were all around that same price, so that is what I priced mine for. So I had this lady contact me that she wanted to buy this for this lady in the nursing home, and that pink was her favorite color, and that she was on a limited budget and she only got so much money per week to spend, and that she really, really wanted this specific jacket. And so I kindly and politely responded back and said, thank you so much for your offer, but at this time, I am not willing to lower my price that much. If that changes, I will let you know in the future. And I'm talking, she wanted to buy it for like $15. It was way less than I was willing to go for. And she kept going back and forth and arguing with me. And at one point, she asked me why I didn't want to keep somebody in the nursing home warm. It was a rain jacket. So you gotta just kind of take these things as they come. If someone's trying to haggle price with you and they're sending you sob stories, another one that I see often, and I have also have happened to me, is someone tells me that they just lost all their money, or they lost their house and they don't have a bunch of money for clothes, and yet they're trying to buy like $100 jacket from me. So when these things happen, I'm very professional, and I actually have, I've mentioned this before, but I have a copy and paste sheet, just a Word document that I made on Google Docs, and it has all of my typed out responses for difficult situations so that I can just copy and paste and hopefully not have to make too many adjustments to what I write, but that way it's seamless. And for these situations, I have, thank you so much for your offer, but at this time that is lower than I'm willing to accept on this item. If it changes in the future, I'll let you know. It says something like that. So in these cases, I always say that if they keep arguing with you, you can actually report them or block them. Again, you know, eBay and Poshmark have things set up to where if people are harassing you, you can deal with them. And I'm sorry, I know that there are a lot of terrible stories and situations going on that truly are happening in people's lives, but you can tell when somebody is trying to scam you. And if somebody is really going through those hardships, they're not going to be looking to harass somebody on eBay or Poshmark for a $40 or $100 jacket. That's just not something somebody in that situation would do. So in those cases, you know, analyze the situation and always respond professionally. And like I mentioned before, I suggest having a copy and paste sheet so that you have your responses already pre-filled out that you can just copy and paste and move on. So lastly, I want to talk about how to avoid scams in the first place. So I mentioned before that they're targeting new resellers. And so if you don't have a lot of feedback, chances are that's how they're targeting you. And I mean, it still happens to me this day. I still have people trying to scam me, but it happened a lot more when I was a newer reseller. I'm talking like weekly, sometimes daily, I was dealing with scams. And now they're far and few in between, but the more feedback and more established you get on any platform, the more likely scammers are to stay away from you, because they probably know that you know the ins and outs and rules of both platforms, and you know what sellers have to their advantage and how they can communicate with eBay and Poshmark. And out of fear of their scam account getting shut down, they'll probably avoid somebody with more feedback. So sell some items, get some positive feedback. You can even purchase items and get positive feedback from those sellers. I would just say try to get a couple under your belt and really work on great customer service in the beginning. That way you can build up your feedback and start to avoid some of those common issues. I also think it helps if you do have to contact eBay or Poshmark. They do really recognize if you are a consistent seller on these platforms, and I think they also look at your feedback. So if you are established on their site, they're more likely to side with you as the seller. I think the biggest thing that you can do is list correctly and make sure you're always putting in the appropriate information. I think sometimes these scammers try to go on and look for mistakes in the listing, and then they know that is a listing that they can scam you on because maybe you missed something or you typed in the wrong thing. So I think making sure you have a complete listing with the correct information is one of the best things that you can do in those situations. And specifically on Poshmark, I've had a lot of issues where I put the correct sizing, I took pictures of the size tag, I even included measurements, but I have buyers who purchased the item and clearly didn't read anything and try them on, they didn't fit. So then they go on and try to say that measurements were incorrect and so on. So Poshmark has recently added, sorry, my phone battery died. Okay, so Poshmark has recently increased the amount of photos in a listing. I think it used to be 8, now it's like 16 or something crazy like that. So what I am considering doing, I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but what I would suggest you to do is as you are taking pictures, take your tape measure and actually take a picture of the item being measured, because if you do that, the buyer cannot come back and say that it wasn't as you described it. And sometimes Poshmark will actually ask them to take a picture of the measurement and then they fudge the numbers, like they'll go to measure the inseam, but you can tell they're pulling the pant leg or folding it. So I would highly suggest, if you have the time and capability to do that, to add the actual photo of the measurement of the item. Should just take a couple more seconds for each listing, but I do think that it's worth it on Poshmark for that reason. Another tip I have is making sure you always add tracking. This not only prevents scamming, but also gives the buyer more comfort because they can track where their item is at. And again, on both eBay and Poshmark, even though you may or may not offer returns, or if you're on Poshmark, they don't allow returns, if someone is trying to harass you about an item, just suggest a return to them, because that way you can avoid the scammer altogether. And then if it is truly a customer, they can actually request, whether you approve or not is up to you, but they can actually request a return. So I highly suggest, if you're not currently utilizing that option, to do so. And then very last tip I have for you is to always remain professional. Keep it short and concise, and by doing this, you're going to sound to a scammer like you know what you're talking about, and you're not going to put up with their bullcrap. And I think that that more so deters somebody away when you do know what you're talking about. All right, guys, so that is it for today's video on scams and scammers. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what your best tip is for avoiding or deterring scammers. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.